Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Insurance Journal's Academy of Insurance's weekly webinar after show. I'm your host, George, and joining me for the after show today is the director of the Academy of Insurance, Mr. Patrick Raitt, and today's instructor. Today's class was Risk and Insurance for Digital Nomads, and our instructor, Mr. Joe Harrington. Joe, welcome to the after show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Fantastic. Today's class, super interesting, and you never think of, well, you did because you came up with the class, but digital nomadry as a population, digital nomads as a population that we need to look out for them in terms of insuring them. But Joe, you talk about how employees in the class kind of like started in the workplace, and then technology enabled them to work from home. And now it's kind of, then there could be a hybrid population that works sometimes in the home, sometimes at work. What's your druthers? Like if you had a song that you were singing, it's the digital nomad's life for me. What would you prefer? Would you like to be a digital nomad? Would you like to be remote in a fixed location or in the workplace, Joe? What's your preference?
And of course, I think the optimum model seems to be fixed location with telecommuting. That as a regular basis, I do think for most organizations, the need to be together, to be face-to-face, trade ideas that don't come up just in a structured setting. You know, like the three of us, if we were hobnobbing together every day, we would come up with, a lot of ideas, and a lot more ideas than if we had one of these every day, because ultimately there's something a little bit constraining about this, even though it's fabulous to be able to do this, So I do think, being together, having spontaneous conversations, and having new people see how seasoned people succeed. Sometimes things come up, they're not on an agenda, but you witness them. You get them almost by osmosis. You get that's how you succeed here. That's how you succeed in general. So I like the idea of having a place where people come together. I think that's important. But in this day and age, nobody wants to put up with some of the stuff I had to do, and maybe Patrick had to do back in the day. I remember taking a personal day to let the plumber in. I don't think anybody would tolerate that now. The expectation that you have at least some ability to work from home, to help manage your personal life. It's not throw a load of laundry in while you're doing your work. That's not hard, but to be able to do that is a big deal, and could, really, it's got to come down to companies saving a lot of money on salary, because I think you'll have to pay a premium to hire someone and say, for this job, you do need to be in a workplace 5-6 days a week. And there are some jobs where that is essential. The equipment and the work is only at the workplace. And I think that going on, people are going to want to get jobs that allow them to be at home at least sometime. And that therefore those jobs that can't allow that will have to pay a premium. I even think in terms of, I showed on that slide how some areas of work that you didn't think would lend themselves to remote work have seen growth in it, principally driven by the pandemic, some necessity there. But nonetheless, it happened. And I do think the ability to structure work so that any employee that does any kind of desk work can do it from home would be valuable. So if you work at it, say you do installations, right? You obviously have to go to the place where you're doing the installation if you're in that line of work. But if if that means a half a day can be spent at home doing the paperwork, writing up the invoices, writing up the plans, whatever, that could make a big difference to some people. Or a day or two or whatever. If you can segregate, what you can do from home from what you have to do at a workplace, I think you're going to be more attractive employer, and without committing more in salary, and perhaps saving some in salary, because that's considered a benefit. And for pure office work today, you are definitely going to pay a premium if you insist your employees come to the office 5 days a week.
Joe, thanks. And I wonder, metaphysically, would a plumber need to take a personal day if he needed an electrician? Or could you just have a barbecue on Sunday and have a buddy from the trade school come over?
Well, one of the beauties of the tradesmen, of course, is they often know at least enough of the other trades to get by. I don't know about that. I am completely inept when it comes to handiwork, so I've always had to rely upon those who know what they're doing, lest I blow up my house.
Fair enough.
Then, the whole digital nomad thing, you mentioned, we have to think about them. Really, they have to think about themselves. I mean, this is not, insurers and agents and others are not going to be able to follow these people entirely and, tell them what to do and get them to do it. That would be it could be attractive if you were able to land them, but it may be hard to do. It may not be worth it. They have to understand themselves. If you are reveling in the freedom you have to do all sorts of things in all sorts of places, then you've got to think back to the kinds of risks that we haven't thought about for a while, because things have been handled through insurance, okay? For generations, you go to a workplace, you get hurt, workers' comp steps in, and nobody, thinks about it much anymore. Now you want the freedom to not be at a workplace. Well, there may be some complications. And I could go on and on about other types of scenarios where really we need a general public risk consciousness, so that the people who are doing these things, taking these risks, are aware of it and understand that if they want coverage, they need to reach out for it and make sure they get the coverage, and not presume that something's going to be taken care of when it may not be. It's a little hard because, indeed, most of the work today we're talking about is relatively low risk. All right. It's desk work done from a laptop. And those other applications are pretty rare. But again, I can see it growing. I can see my son's an engineer, works from his laptop, can work from anywhere. As I told you, if he ever has to go on an inspection or something else, then there is another dimension to things. If he ever gets into any kind of installation work or maintenance work, I don't think that'll happen, but I can imagine a person in his situation might, then things change. Then you get into activities that are not so sedate as sitting at a laptop. But even there are, the odd things can happen even when you're working on your laptop. So,
true.
They have to, we're not going to, address these risks on our own. The people taking on the risks have to be mindful of the risks.
Absolutely. Patrick, he who would not take a personal day to call his herpetologist if his iguana was sick, rate. You are the director of the Academy of Insurance. What do you think of the idea of the digital nomad in general, Joe's class in particular? And would you rather work from home, remotely, be a digital nomad, or ride the rails and hobo your way to Oshkosh to find work?
Ooh, Oshkosh. I've never been to Oshkosh. I've also never been to Boston in the fall, so that's another story altogether. The fact of it is that more and more people working remotely are capable of doing so wherever they happen to be. And that's simply a truth. One thing that we didn't discuss as a part of this, and I don't know if you've looked into it very much, Joe, but there is a growing group of people who are purchasing RVs and working remotely from whatever RV campground or place where they are somewhere around. And so they may have a little bit of personal property coverage, which is I'm not necessarily aware of it in that instance.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking about that. And many people who do that RV life, there are RV associations and clubs that they can join that will give them a permanent address for licensure, for taxes and mailing and voting and all those things, even though they may only be in that location for, as you know, whatever the state minimum number of days might be. So and the like.
Yeah.
So those things are growing even in that way.
Yeah. And that's, that makes the risk more attractive to P&C insurers. There are RV policies. There are RV policies that have the personal liability coverage that can go with a residential policy. Because if your RV is big enough to have a guest, then you want the quote premises liability, not just the vehicle liability. And the question, that helps certainly for P&C insurers, but it still is a big step to move from a truly fixed location. Because, now you are establishing a permanent address for purposes of voting and taxes and so forth and so on. But in terms of the property and liability risk, that is possibly irrelevant. All right. You could be in a wildfire area or not. You could be in a flood area or not. You could be in an earthquake area or not. A tornado zone or not. All of that is, that's the bread and butter of property coverage. And also when you're blending business activities and personal activities and have enough of a vehicle to actually have it function somewhat like a household, then you have the whole question of personal liability coverage, as well as, any liability you might sustain. If you carry around a bicycle and you hit somebody with your bicycle, or some other weird thing that happens, it still, requires people to be risk conscious.
Absolutely. And
well, let me ask you one other question. Right now, where are we? I'm in suburban Chicago. Where are you, Patrick?
I'm in rural North Florida.
Rural North Florida. And George, you're in?
Manchester, New Hampshire.
Okay. So here we are doing the remote thing together. Patrick, would you care if George just worked somewhere else and didn't tell you? If suddenly we signed on to one of these things and George said, "Oh, hi, I'm in West Virginia today."
I would, for my purposes, it would not bother me a bit.
Okay.
If George were there. In fact, we had an employee with our organization who, at any given time, only his supervisor knew where he might be. He could be in Japan, Colombia, or Oklahoma.
Yeah. And there are times maybe when supervisors don't even know. That's another factor here. Yes. I mean, what George does. George doesn't do high hazard work. And, is unlikely to be in a high hazard location. But, you could imagine circumstances where, wait a minute. I mean, he's in Bali now, and he's up in the middle of the night and doing what he needs to do, but there could be something unnerving about that, and especially if he was actually carrying out any kinds of activity that had a remote chance of occupational injury or damage to somebody else, let alone, and then I mentioned the whole visa thing. If you were running an insurance organization, he's a licensed agent, in New Hampshire. He goes somewhere else and begins to do things. I mean, he could do a lot of agent activities in Oklahoma, even if he couldn't sell the policy. You'd have to hand it off to a licensed Oklahoma agent to, get the signature. That kind of stuff now happens, where you don't know where someone's working, and it's one of these things. Clearly, your hair's not going to go on fire about it. It's not high hazard work, and you would cut yourself off from a lot of good people if you said you absolutely must report to me every day where you are. I mean, there are some people who say, "Screw you, I'm not working for you." Good people, talented people, but it's still a somewhat unnerving thing that this person is completely off on their own, and they only respond to me by doing the tasks I expect them to do. That's different. It's a step forward, and it has risks, and hopefully they're aware of them.
It's interestingly enough, many countries are beginning to allow for what they call digital nomad visas, where they're allowing people, they want to know, hey, are you coming into work from your U.S.-based business for a period of time or whatever? And as you were mentioning, I think that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. As we consider much of the work that is done in offices, many times, can be done completely virtually, and it's the concept of the digital nomad is as intriguing as it is, I guess, risk unknown in some ways. And by that, I mean, as like you'd alluded to, when somebody is, if they're working, they're doing their work, but they're sitting at a beach or camping, if you will, what kind of activities, how do you adjudicate that workers' comp claim if they hurt themselves legitimately working in a place where work isn't normally done?
Right. And I mean, the template is desk work, so the high, the rate of sudden injury is rare. But as it extends into installation work, inspection work, transit delivery related type of work, the potential for greater complications arises. And you mentioned the visas now, allowing people to work on tourist visas. This is an extended permission, which also serves as a restriction. Countries want to know, well, we don't want to kick people. We don't want to keep people out. If they want to come here, be tourists, spend money, and do a little work on the side, we want to make sure that what that work is, and that work is not displacing our domestic employees. So, these tourist visas with work permissions are typically, you can keep working for your guy back in your own country, but our work remains our work. And so they're establishing a new expectation as you travel. And, at this point in time, it still varies from country to country. I believe there are like 45 countries or so that have that kind of arrangement. And like I said, that means 160 or so countries that don't. And if you're traveling, you're not completely in control necessarily of when people contact you by email and so forth. So when are you working? When are you not working? And what are the rules for when you can and cannot work in jurisdictions outside the United States?
Absolutely.
And I doubt that many of these people give that a moment's thought. They're advised to by the various organizations that deal with nomadic risk, but I'm sure they have a tough time reaching everybody that needs to be reached. And my guess is that while I'm certainly not going to claim that there's some grave social emergency of digital nomads being uninsured, I think for the most part, I wouldn't be surprised if most of them have some patchwork of coverage that has some things covered that are not that important because they come with a policy, and have some things that are more important that aren't covered because they don't come, they're not built in. Got to think about it. And clearly the people taking on the risk and establishing the risk, we really need them to be candid and forthright, because this is something you can't rely upon historical loss data and stuff like that to deal with people who are changing their location and what they're doing from month to month.
Absolutely, Joe. Joe, today's class was Risk and Insurance for Digital Nomads. Thank you so much for your help today, your insights. Really appreciate it. Patrick, you're the director of the Academy of Insurance. Thank you for coming to the after show. Gentlemen, thanks again. This is your host, George, on behalf of the two of you, saying thanks, everyone, for coming to the after show. We will see you next time. Take care. Who knows where we'll see you? Remotely at Joe's house.
You're right.
At a WeWork location. Who knows? But we'll be there providing you the best education possible. Have a great day, everybody.
Take it easy. Thanks, guys.